Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is your boy Fitzmonk TV here, aka G-Lauren33. I am back here tonight with another episode of the Legit Shoot podcast for you guys. And tonight we are here to review AEW Dynamite for January 12th, 2022. Hope you guys are doing well and staying healthy. I don't think this is gonna be a super long review. If you guys, if you guys haven't noticed, my AEW reviews are typically shorter than my WWE reviews, just because I have a lot more to say when it comes to WWE, right? Plus, WWE gives us a lot more content, and usually WWE pisses me off on a weekly basis. I don't really get mad at AEW. AEW is not perfect, right? But at least with AEW, from a creative standpoint, I like what they're doing, and they don't piss me off as much. WWE's creative is absolutely garbage, and most of the stuff with WWE it seems like they just don't care. At least with AEW, they do care. AEW does care about their wrestlers. Sometimes they do fuck up. They, like I said, they are not perfect, right? But at least when I'm watching, I can see that they care. They make mistakes, right? Tony Khan is not the best booker in the world by any means. I feel like more it's just that the wrestlers in that company have a knowledge of the sport of pro wrestling. And, since they have a little more creative freedom over there, they're able to tell Tony Khan, I want to take this direction with my character, and have this storyline or this. And it makes it actually a little bit easier for Tony Khan and the rest of that staff to book and do what they have to do, So with AEW, they try, they care. They're not perfect all the time, but they care. And that's the biggest difference between them and WWE from a creative standpoint. With AEW, tonight's show was pretty good. I really liked the first hour. And I feel like now that I'm doing AEW reviews on a weekly basis, that's something I'm noticing a lot, right? AEW's first hour and their second hours are different. The second hours are terrible. It's not unwatchable or anything like that, but it's just not as good as the first hour. Seems like they do a lot of their big angles during the first hour of the show, right? You want to start the show hot and you want to continue that. And then they put a lot of their mid-card stuff in the middle of the show around the second hour. And then they try to heat things up towards the main event depending on what they're doing. No matter if it's an AEW World Title match, no matter if it's like a big trios match with, the Young Bucks or Undisputed Era and all that, no matter if it's like a big women's match. It is something that I do notice a lot with AEW, right? The first hour is really when they go hard, and then the second hour things kind of calm down a little bit, and then they ramp things up back with the main event. And of course, if you ever go to an AEW show, they record AEW Dark at around the 7 o'clock hour. They record all the dark matches, right? As people are still coming into the arena, people are getting beer and food and all that. And then, of course, they film 2 hours of Dynamite, and then they take like a 20-minute break, and then they film an hour of Rampage. Then they do like one more segment to close the show, and that's it. So usually, like if you go to an AEW show and you're there from the beginning to end, it's about a 4 hour experience. A little over 4 hours of good old fashioned wrestling. But tonight's AEW show, like I said, was I enjoyed it for the most part. They are establishing some new angles. We have a new challenger for Hangman Adam Page in the AEW World Championship, right? CM Punk and MJF, they're taking the next steps in their feud, right? And that was probably the two biggest things to note. There a lot of other stuff happened as well, but those were the two, I would say, the biggest things that happened coming out of this show tonight. Before we get into anything, though, I want to let you guys know, if you guys haven't checked out the Monday Night Raw review, right? We talked about Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley and everything that we know so far going into the Royal Rumble, right? We also had Becky Lynch's new challenger for the Raw Women's Championship revealed. So if you guys have not checked out the Monday Night Raw review, it was about 2 hours. I promise you, I'll make that promise right now. No way that this review goes anywhere close to 2 hours. It probably will go around an hour, maybe a little bit less, depending on how quickly we get through the show. But if you guys haven't already, go check out the Monday Night Raw review. It is live on the channel. If you guys want to see me in more of a bitchy and ranty mode, you guys go check out my WWE reviews. That's where you'll get more of an animated Fitz. If you guys are new to the channel, this is your first time watching me. Thank you guys for joining me here on the Legit Shoot podcast. I try to post, at least 3 podcasts a week. I try to. I'm busy. I'm a busy guy, but I try to give you guys a Monday Night Raw review, an AEW review, and a SmackDown review every single week. I could, if I wanted to, do NXT and everything else, but that's just too much wrestling for me to do over one weekend. My schedule's already kind of crazy enough as is. So if you guys new to the channel, I have a playlist with every single episode of this podcast I've ever done. So go check out some of those review and subscribe if you guys are new. The links to subscribe or the links to follow me on social media are in the description down below, so you guys can find those there. My Twitter, my Instagram. Uh, Anything else? There's really no big announcements really for me. I do have one small story, and then we'll get into AEW. Usually if there's any big WWE news that I didn't cover on Raw, I usually try to cover it here on the Dynamite review. And the only real thing I have for WWE wise is after what I believe like 7 years away from the ring, which feels like forever, right? Corey Graves has been clear to return to the ring. Corey Graves, you guys know he is a WWE announcer. He announces Raw every single week with Jimmy Smith and Byron Saxon. But for some of you guys who may have not watched NXT back in the day, he actually was a wrestler, right? And then he suffered some injuries, and then he wasn't cleared, and instead of like leaving wrestling forever, he became an announcer, and he's an okay announcer. He's a decent announcer in my eyes. When he first came to the main roster, he was great, but I feel like over the past 2 years, he's become a little bit cringe. And that's my personal opinion. He's become a little bit cringe on the mic. He's become a little bit cringe on the mic in my eyes. If you ever watch like a Carmella match, you know what I'm talking about. He has a tip. He reminds me a little bit of like a heel Jerry the King Lawler. Jerry the King Lawler is one of the greatest commentators of all time. My favorite commentary duo of all time is easily Jerry the King Lawler and good old JR from the Attitude Era. Those two will probably never be surpassed as a commentary duo by anybody in this era or probably in the future. But if you listen to Corey Graves, he can be a little bit cringe on the mic at times. Jerry King Lawler, he would have, even though he was a babyface commentator, he would have the tendency to always like kind of be horny for the divas and the female superstars. Corey does this now as a heel, right? And if you guys didn't know, he is engaged to Carmella, who is one of the female wrestlers, and every single time Corey gets super horny on the announce desk, and it's really cringe to listen to. He's become a little bit more cringe these last couple of years. He's still pretty good at his job, right? Especially when big time matches, he's pretty good, but he is a little bit cringe on the announce desk, and that's what he's been pretty much known for. If you didn't watch NXT back in the day, you didn't really know who Corey Graves was. You didn't know he was a wrestler, right? He actually had a couple NXT championship matches. If you search him on YouTube, you can watch Corey Graves versus Seth Rollins back when Seth Rollins was the first NXT champion. There's matches like Corey Graves versus Sami Zayn and some other ones as well. He was not a bad wrestler. He wasn't the best in NXT at the time, but he was definitely a decent wrestler, right? So now it has been announced that he can return to the ring, and it'll be interesting to see how WWE goes about that. Remember Samoa Joe before WWE freaking buried him, and his staff, right? Samoa Joe was wrestling a little bit, and he was on the commentary team. It's not, it's not a surprise to see a wrestler on the commentary team. WWE's, kind of been doing that for a while. They have no problem putting a wrestler on the commentary team, no matter if it's a short time or a long time. Remember, back when CM Punk was in WWE, a decade ago, even CM Punk would have, times when he was a commentator for a couple of weeks at a time, sometimes in between different angles and stuff like that. So, it's going to be interesting to see, will WWE change the commentary team on Raw and let Corey Graves, go back to wrestling? If Corey Graves wants that, I don't think WWE's going to stop him. But I feel like WWE would rather have Corey as an announcer than a wrestler. I don't think Corey as a talent right? And we don't know. It's been 7 years since the guy's been in the ring, but I don't think Corey as a talent really. I don't think that he's gonna bring anything to the table where WWE's gonna push him to the moon. Maybe he can do something in the mid card, right? I don't think he, has anything that's gonna put him on that main event level. But it would be interesting to see if WWE chooses to have him wrestle again. Maybe they put him on Raw in that mid card scene around the U.S. Championship, right? Maybe something with Damian Priest. Imagine, I would not be surprised. What if WWE did like an angle, right, where Corey Graves, you know, becomes interested in Damian Priest's U.S. Championship from the announce desk, right? He kind of teases, going after Damian Priest, and then maybe on the road to WrestleMania, Graves actually goes after Damian Priest, and then they do something where it's Priest versus Graves at WrestleMania. Like I said, I'm just giving an idea, and you guys know me. I feel like I can book WWE better sitting behind this desk, than WWE does most of the time. So who knows? But so I don't know. I'm just throwing out an idea. If someone from WWE is listening and they take this idea, well, just know that they probably got it from Fitzmonk TV because there's nobody else in the IWC that's going to give you that idea. Nobody. I guarantee that. I can personally guarantee that. You know, unless they've been watching me and they try to steal it for themselves and don't give me the credit for it. It'll be interesting to see if WWE chooses to have Corey Graves wrestle. Right? I feel like it's probably more likely that they'll keep him on the announce team because especially when he's been doing that now for what 5-6 years. He was a commentator on NXT, and they called him up to the main roster, and he's done a decent job. Outside of some cringiness here and there, he's been a decent commentator for the last half decade. Uh, you know, it's also be interesting. Corey hasn't really said anything on social media. I don't think it'll be interesting to see. This is it Corey's desire, to get back in the ring. Does he want to continue what he's doing now, or does he really want to go back full time, as a wrestler? I don't know. That's gonna be up to him. He is 37. He hasn't really wrestled since he was 30. So like I said, it would be very very interesting, to see how that'll goes. I'm happy for Corey, and we'll just have to wait and see what's the plan for him going forward if they truly want to have Corey Graves back in the ring. Uh, you also got to think about if Corey does get back in the ring, what does that do for the Raw, commentating team, right? You guys know I can't stand Byron Saxon. If you guys have ever listened to this podcast and saw a Run Monday Night Raw review or paper review, I can't stand Byron Saxon at all. I know the guy's a nice guy in real life, but as a commentator, he's cringe. He is just horrific. Out of all of the main roster commentators, maybe out of all the commentators, including NXT, right? I think he's the worst. I really do think that. And I hate, when I say bad things about, a black brother of mine. But if I'm being objective, Byron Saxton as a commentator sucks. He sucks as a commentator on Raw. So if Corey Graves was to leave that announce booth, it would just be Jimmy Smith, who he is a good lead announcer. But remember, he's only been in WWE for what, I think less than 6 months. He came in the fall. He hasn't even had his first WrestleMania. He hasn't even had his first Royal Rumble yet, and he has done a good job of picking up WWE knowledge quickly. The guy is good as a lead announcer, but you, if you only have a commentary team of just Jimmy Smith and Byron Saxon, I'm not going to enjoy that. Not because I don't like Jimmy Smith, but then, we would have to hear more of Byron Saxon, you know? And if I had to make a choice between hearing Corey Graves be horny and listening to Byron Saxon, I would pick Corey Graves any day. And you guys know on SmackDown, Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, they work really well together. They're really good. Uh, so it's not like it wouldn't be a surprise for WWE to go back to a 2-man duo on Raw, but they've been doing a 3-man duo on Raw now for a long time, for years now. So I don't know who they would bring back as a commentator, right? I don't know who they would bring in to replace Corey Graves. This kind of pisses me off because you released Samoa Joe, right? Like, imagine with Samoa Joe. Imagine if you brought back Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe would be the perfect fit on that announce team. If you don't want Samoa Joe wrestling, at least let him be an announcer. Samoa Joe was a brilliant announcer. He did a fantastic job on Raw when it was him, I think what was it, Tom Phillips and Saxon during the pandemic. Samoa Joe was the best announcer out of the three of them. So if Samoa Joe was still with WWE, I would love to see him at least be on the announce team. If you weren't gonna have him wrestle, at least let him get to announce. He was a solid announcer, solid announcer. So that's something I would have done. I don't know what WWE's gonna do. We'll just have to wait and see. But it. We don't even know Corey Graves is gonna be in the ring. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if WWE had Corey Graves in the Royal Rumble. I would not be surprised if they had Corey Graves as a surprise entry in the Royal Rumble, right? Maybe you have Corey Graves at ringside, and all of a sudden his music plays, and then everyone's like, "What?" And then Corey Graves is like, "Yeah, I'm back. I'm cleared." You know, maybe that would probably be a cool Rumble moment. Corey Graves getting back in the ring. But like I said, we'll just have to see what happens. They haven't announced Corey's going to be back in the ring. They just said he's going to be clear. One more thing of note, and then we'll get into AEW. It does make me interested what could happen with Paige. We know that Paige has wanted to get back in the ring for years, right? And I hate how people blame Sasha Banks for what happened to Paige at that live event years ago because that wasn't anybody's fault. It was a freak accident. Sasha and Paige had practiced that spot for years, really. They've been doing that spot at other live events. So it was just an accident. And Paige came out and said that it wasn't Sasha's fault, right? But I hated how Sasha got blamed for that injury with Paige back in, what was it, 2017, I believe. And Paige just wanted to get back in the ring, right? This could open the door for Paige to get back. Remember, Daniel Bryan, we thought Daniel Bryan would never get back in the ring. He got back. Edge got back in the ring after 10 years, right? And now you've seen Corey Graves. Corey Graves was out for, 7 years? I feel like this could open the door for Paige to potentially return. Like I said, I would not be surprised if years down the line Paige would get cleared. Who knows? We're talking about Corey Graves in the Rumble. Imagine if Paige came back in the Royal Rumble this year. That would be an epic moment. That would be an awesome moment having Paige back in the women's division. I feel like she could add a lot of value, and you know, and so I'm hoping that Paige, she still is signed with the company. She's still signed. Uh, she's not wrestling or anything. She does a lot of things on Fox and FS1 and things like that. But Paige is still signed with the company. If you want, right, have Paige. If Paige can get cleared, look, if Corey Graves can get cleared, if Edge can come back and have a second run like he's had the last couple years, right? If what's his name? If Daniel Bryan could come back, and now you're seeing Daniel Bryan, he's arguably the best wrestler in the world with what he's done in WWE, and now he's doing that in AEW, right? If you can do that with all those three, if all those three men can come back, I think Paige can make a return to the ring as well. I don't know how Paige is feeling. I don't know anything like that, but I do think Paige can come back. If her body allows. She's only 29. I just searched it up right now. She's 20. She's not even 30 yet. She's not 30. And remember, her career kind of, she was forced to retire, 4 years ago? 3-4 years ago? Almost 5 years because now it's 2022. At least 4 years. Her career had to end when she was 25. 25. The prime of her life. And she's still in her prime. She's not even 30 yet. She doesn't even turn 30 till August. So if those men could get cleared, right? Edge, who was in his 40s, Daniel Bryan, his late 30s, right? Corey Graves, also in his 30s. Corey Graves is 37, right? If those people can get cleared at an older age, those men are a decade and a half older than Paige, right? Yeah, Daniel Bryan's 40, right? If those men could get cleared, and Paige is only 29, I think there's a chance. I think there's actually a good chance that Paige could get cleared. So, and we have heard rumors that there is going to be potentially a very surprise entrant in the Women's Royal Rumble. They haven't gave us any indication who, but they have been teasing it, right? Imagine if it's Paige. I really think now with Corey Graves being cleared, this can open the door for Paige to come back. Definitely, she's too young, and too talented to not get cleared ever again. I really don't. I really, you know, think Paige should be able to get cleared. I'm looking up right now. I haven't. There isn't any update on Paige, but you never know. You never know, right? Anyway, let's get into AEW tonight. Like I said, this was an okay show. Wasn't nothing too crazy happened. But I enjoyed it. So we'll get into it really quick. So we'll see how fast I get through this. Like I said, the AEW reviews tend to get a little quick. Because there's not much ranting. But the show opened up with, Undisputed Era, even though they're not technically called that on AEW, right? But I call them that. Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Bobby Fish come out, right? And they didn't really see too much. Cole basically said that 2021 was a great year for the three of them. Even though, I don't know how true that is, because remember in 2021 they were all in WWE, right? And then they slowly broke up. Bobby Fish disappeared from NXT. Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly had their feud, which took the majority of the year on NXT television, right? So still, it wasn't until like the very end of last year that they regrouped in AEW. But like I said, that's just me nitpicking, right? This is a promo, and Cole talked about how they were ready to dominate once again in 2022. Cole said that he was still undefeated, hadn't been pinned, hadn't been submitted yet in AEW, and that was not going to end anytime soon. You knew the Young Bucks and Brandon Cutler were going to come out, right? And this was cool. The Young Bucks basically said, "Hey, you didn't invite us to this party, right? You didn't invite us to this nice little rally speech." And Kyle O'Reilly said, with all love and respect, we didn't ask for your help in Daisy Place a couple weeks ago when they had that trios match. That main evented AEW. So they are. You can clearly see that they're teasing. Eventually, sometime this year, Young Bucks and the Red Dragon are gonna face each other, right? And Adam Cole would be put right in the middle. Like I said, I would not be surprised if that's uh not they save that for when Kenny Omega comes back. I don't have any update on when Kenny Omega will be back. I know he's dealing with injuries, but this is a storyline that's gonna take I think a majority of the year on AEW television. Clearly, they're slowly like some weeks they're on the same page, some weeks they aren't. Clearly, there's animosity between those two teams with Adam Cole right in the middle, and clearly at some point this year we're gonna get that feud, and it's probably gonna be one of the best tag team feuds, and probably lead to the best tag team match that we see on in all professional wrestling all year. I think we're all gonna be hyped when we get that match, whenever it does happen. So uh so we see uh that as these two are going at it, right, not too much happened. So the Young Bucks said that Matt and Nick said that AEW is their company and they are focused on regaining the tag team titles, right? Even though I don't think that's happening. I think Red Dragon will probably. I think it's more likely that Red Dragon will win those tag titles at some point this year than the Young Bucks regaining them, and maybe that's what they're waiting for. I could maybe they're waiting for one of these two teams to become AEW tag champions, and that's when they do the feud. Because of course it's gonna have a whole nother element if you have the tag titles on the line on top of the story and everything else that they're building with this feud, right? So we'll see. But the AEW tag division is spectacular right now, and the Lucha Bros are out, and when they come back, they'll be right back in the mix, right? There's so many good tag teams in AEW, Darby and Sting and Private Party, the Acclaim, Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, who are the current tag champions, right? There's just so many good teams, so many teams that you could say are deserving to be tag champions at the moment. Uh, so it's going to be interesting to see, all year how all those teams are, fighting for position to become tag champions. But I do think at some point we will get Red Dragon versus the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team Championship. I think it would be more likely that Red Dragon will win those titles before, but you never know. You never know. Uh, but anyway, so like I said, O'Reilly and Fish said that they have the same goal, and then best friends uh come out, right? Orange Cassidy, Chuck Taylor, uh Trent and Wheeler, right? So all of a sudden, Coach talk trash to Cassie. Cassie T saying something, but we know, of course, Cassie's not. Yeah, he's not really a talker on the mic. So all of a sudden, Cassidy went after Cole. A huge brawl took him out, right? Or a huge brawl broke out, and the baby faces actually were able to, get on top of the heels until Chris Stanlatter confronted Adam Cole, and then AEW Women's Champion Britt Baker came out and she attacked Chris Stanlatter from behind. Uh, Baker did the stomp, right, a la Seth Rollins, did this, the curb stomp. Then Cole hit a super kick, and that was that. So the heels stood tall to, close out the segment. Pretty cool moment. Usually Cole, when Young Bucks kiss him on the cheek, but instead Britt Baker was out there and like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then Britt Baker gave a nice little smooch to Cole, and that's how the segment ended. Later in the night, I love those backstage segments with Brandon Cutler with the camera. They did another one here, and basically they had Britt Baker there for this segment. So the big thing here was Britt Baker uh Britt Baker challenged Stan Ladder and Cassidy to a mixed tag team match for next week on Dynamite. So that was that, and that was announced. So that's announced for next week. I don't know if this is going to lead to Chris Stanlander being the next challenger for Britt Baker, because she does need a new challenger for the women's championship, but we'll see. I'm still waiting for Thunder Rosa, right? But we'll see if this is gonna lead to Chris Stanlander and Britt Baker for the AEW Women's Title. So that was that. Decent way, simple segment, right? Nothing too much, but decent way to start up the show. And remember, Dynamite doesn't really do promo segments to open up the show. I honestly thought that they would either open the show with the interim AEW TNT Championship match, because I thought Punk and MJF would main event the show. I mean, not Punk and MJF. Punk and Wardlow would open up the show, but instead they did this promo segment. It was a interesting way to start the show. It was good. Nothing too special, but yeah, there you go. Right there you go. Uh, anyway, moving on. Next up, like I said, I thought this was going to be the main event of the show, but it was the first match of the night after the opening segment. We had CM Punk and Wardlow, right? And there was rumors that this was actually supposed to take place at the last pay per view, but they changed it. This wasn't. This match wasn't about the match itself, because the match was just It was kind of a glorified squash. It was kind of a glorified squash almost, because Punk took a beating. Punk got a little bit of offense here and there, uh, but uh, but Wardlow dominated this thing. It was almost kind of like what it was almost like what AJ Styles and Almas could have been. And I'm saying that because Almas sucks in the ring. If Almas was an actual good big man, this is what AJ Styles and Almas could have been. But Almas sucks in the ring. And I'm not going to talk about Almas anymore because that's for Monday Night Raw. But that's the comparison I would get. The match wasn't special. It wasn't supposed to be special. This was more about the story with Punk and MJF and furthering that, and also the story of the slow dissension between MJF and Wardlow. It almost happened here, but it didn't. And also Wardlow was kind of in the news today because there is reports that WWE is going to go after him when his contract is up, and I wouldn't be surprised, right? Wardlow fits what WWE likes. As much as I can't stand Vince McMahon, Wardlow is the perfect is the definition of somebody that WWE would want. A big man, jacked, right? Powerbomb machine. WWE loves those types of guys. You see how Vince is with big men. You know, WWE would love to have Wardlow. They would actually push him to the moon. I think WWE would actually push Wardlow to the moon. Because if there's one thing WWE loves, it's big men. No matter how good or bad they are in the ring, Vince loves his big men. So I would not be surprised if WWE was actually able to get Wardlow. I don't know if they will. I don't know. That could go either way, but still, it is something to take note of, something to look out for. I'm not sure when Wardlow's contract expires. I don't really pay attention to contract talk and all that too much, but like I said, I would not be surprised if Wardlow went over to WWE. Definitely AEW is going to want to do everything to re-sign him, right? But we'll just have to be patient and see how that all goes. But the match itself, Punk came out, right? It was good to see Punk in his normal tights, not his sweatpants or what are not well, it's not sweatpants, but you guys know what I'm talking about. His long wrestling gear, right? I love seeing Punk just wrestling his normal wrestling tights. But someone tried to mention to me that Punk wasn't as over as he was when he first made his AEW debut. And I'm just like, no, it's because Punk, as great as he is, right? He's just another guy on the AEW roster. He's not the AEW World Champion. He's in a very slow build with MJF right now, right? And people have gotten used to Punk in AEW. It's not a surprise when you see him anymore. The first couple weeks when Punk first joined AEW, it was like, damn, 7 years, 7 freaking years, that we didn't see Punk in the ring. Punk's now been back now for, he's been part of AEW now for close to 5 months. It was it was August when he came back, right? I believe late July, early August. August was when he came back. So now that he's been with AEW now for 4 or 5 months, it's now that people are just used to him being there. It's not that Punk isn't over. He clearly is. He's still one of the hottest names in all of professional wrestling. And, he gets to CM Punk chants. People still go crazy over his theme song. It's just that, you've gotten used to CM Punk being in AEW. That's not a bad thing. It's just that now we're used to Punk being there every week. It's not a surprise that now he's back after 7 years. You know. So anyway, back to the match. Uh, you know, uh, like I said, Wardlow dominated this match. Punk got a little bit of offense here and there, right? He hit his signature knee in the corner, but then Wardlow was able to take advantage, and then Wardlow took him from the rope, right? The corner rope, and slammed him for a power bomb. And this is where the beatdown started. Wardlow hit about I believe it was 5 power bombs, right? He hit a second one. Then after the third one, he just went into doing them over and over again, and then he got up to 5. And clearly, Punk was done, right? Wardlow went for the pin, but then MJF got up on the apron. This is where things got wonky, right? MJF wanted more. MJF wanted Wardlow to destroy Punk to the point where Punk would be taken out of action and he wouldn't be going after MJF anymore, right? Because we know Punk's been going after MJF now for weeks. Uh, so it's at first Wardlow's like, really, right? And then but Wardlow went for I think he hit 2 more power bombs, right? I think he hit a 6 and a 7 one, and then he would go for the pin again, but then MJF stopped him again, and MJF's like, no, that's not enough. Then all of a sudden you see Punk rolling out of the ring, and then MJF made Wardlow put him through the table at ringside, which usually supposed to be a DQ if I remember correctly. Usually that's a DQ. So I thought, okay, they're probably gonna go the DQ finish route here, right? Wardlow's not gonna get pinned. Punk's gonna win by DQ to keep his undefeated record, and that's gonna be that. You know, so Wardlow put Punk through the table, beautiful spot, right? Punk sold it perfectly. Then Wardlow went to put Punk back into the ring, right? But then MGF wanted more power bombs, and this is when the mistake was made. Wardlow listened to MJF too much instead of just ending the match himself when he had the chance to. Punk rode up, and Wardlow 1, 2, 3, and that was that. That was that. And Wardlow was in shock and in anger. This was just like Bret Hart versus Diesel back in the day. So after the match, of course, MJF is then talking shit to Wardlow like you could never win the big one, you could never get the job done, even though it was MJF who basically cost Wardlow the match because Wardlow could have won the match, but MJF was barking orders, right? And then it looked like Wardlow was finally about to turn on MJF because people have been waiting for that for weeks. We've been waiting for that. They've been teasing it for weeks. And we finally thought, all right, is this going to be the moment Wardlow becomes a mega babyface? But they didn't do it, because then Sean Spears came out and they, all walked to the back, pissed off. And then, Punk was recovering at ringside. And that was the end of the segment. But then MJF came out a little bit later, right? He came out about 10, 15 minutes later. Back, he was so angry. I will say this, MJF's suit was I did not like that. The pink and the maroon, like the color scheme made sense. I just didn't really like it. The suit MJF was wearing. But anyway, MJF came back out and he was still angry from, what had happened a little bit earlier. And basically, he said Punk had gotten a fluke victory over Wardlow, right? But he said that next week he teased, that he was finally going to give Punk the match he wanted and face him next week on Dynamite. But I knew exactly where they were going with this right away. They're like, so MJF said the match you want, you're going to get. And then he said next week it would be Punk versus Sean Spears, right? Punk versus Sean Spears. And that's been announced and confirmed for Dynamite next week. You knew this was going to happen. This is the way MJF is with every feud, right? So clearly, they're slowly building the Punk and MJF. We know that AEW wants to save this for pay per view, and the most likely candidate for that is probably going to be AEW Revolution. I think that's sometime in February, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. If I am wrong, someone please give me the date in the comments section. But they are building towards Punk and MJF. And I do think when they do the match, MJF will be Punk. MJF will be the guy to give Punk his first loss in AEW. And it probably will be at Evolution. Or Revolution. Sorry. And then, it'll be a way to continue the feud. Cause I kind of still think MJF will probably be the one to beat MJF. I think MJF will be the one to probably defeat Hangman Adam Page for the AEW World Championship. And then I think Punk will be the one to take the title off MJF. That's what I think. But, you never know. But I do think they are building towards MJF and Punk at Revolution. And I think that will be when Punk gets his first loss by MJF in some heel, some crazy heel way. Wardlow's gonna turn on MJF here eventually. It's bound to happen, and then of course that would turn Wardlow into a huge babyface star. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen here eventually, and definitely it's gonna be a big moment. It's gonna be a huge moment because the fans want to cheer Wardlow, right? You see, he's not doing as much heel offense anymore, right? His offense is more tweener like if anything. So clearly, Wardlow's going to be turning babyface here. And, they keep dropping the seeds each and every week. It'll be interesting to see when they finally do it. But we are getting close to MJF losing his big man, right? Wardlow will be turning on MJF. It's bound to happen here sometime soon. Sometime soon into the future. And, I cannot wait for that. But this was done beautifully. The match wasn't special, but the story was done pretty damn well. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the coming weeks with MGF and Punk. Next up, we had Dante Martin versus Powerhouse Hobbs. One thing is, on this show they had a lot of singles matches, so it was kind of interesting that some of these matches got a lot of time. I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining at all. I just thought some of these matches would be a little bit shorter because they did have a lot of singles matches on the card. But I think they did a decent job with time. Uh, so this was good as well. This was another solid match. Uh, Powerhouse Hobbs dominated with his power moves. I love the power and strength that he used. He had control for most of the match with his power offense, and you had Ricky Starks at ringside, of course. And after the commercial break, Dante took the advantage again, but with Starks at ringside, it was not going to be easy. Starks got involved again, but then Jay Lethal, I almost mistaked him for Scorpio Sky, but Jay Lethal came out and he pulled the Ricky Starks from the ring apron, right? And then Martin was able to take advantage of the distraction, delivered the nosedive, which is a beautiful finisher, and was able to get the win. So that was that. So I think I would say probably right now, maybe next week on Rampage, we'll probably get like a tag team match with these four. Because Jay Lethal didn't really have anything to do with it. He came out more just to have Dante Martin's back. So I think probably next week on Rampage. Don't be surprised. Jay Lethal, Dante Martin versus Powerhouse Hobbs. What am I saying? Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs, and what's his name? And Ricky Starks. Clearly, at some point, they're gonna do Dante Martin and Ricky Starks, maybe for the FTW Championship. But it'll be interesting when they do that. But that's where I think the direction of the story is going right now. Good match, and that would lead us into the early 9 o'clock hour, right? So backstage, we had an interaction between Chris Jericho and Eddie Kingston, right? So you had most of the inner circle back. The only person that wasn't there was Sammy Guerrero because Sammy was getting ready for his TNT title match later on to main event the show. But the big thing here is, Jericho said that he would be out there to have Sammy's back, right? And they also got rewarded with faction of the year for 2021. Uh, but then Eddie Kingston came up, and Kingston, this is kind of his thing, right? He's a baby face, but he also acts like a tweener sometimes as well. He doesn't get along with a lot of people. He doesn't matter if you're a baby face or a heel. Kingston's the same character all the time, right? So Kingston then got into a confrontation with the inner circle, and then Santana and Ortiz, they they didn't want anything to do with it, right? They didn't want to get into the middle between two of their good friends, so they kind of just backed out of it. Jake Hager did as well, and then uh, Jericho and Eddie Kingston went at it a little bit on the mic. So Jericho said, if I don't know what's with this situation, but Jericho said, I'm gonna be out there in Sammy's corner, right? And if you do anything, that potentially cost Sammy's the match, I'm probably gonna kick your ass. And Kingston said, I dare you to do something, right? I dare you. Kingston's been feuding with Team 2.0 now for a grip now. So it's like I said, Kingston's funny. You guys know I love Kingston. I don't know if they're just waiting for John Moxley to come back. 'Cause I still think when Moxley does eventually come back, he's gonna turn heel, right? I don't know. Kingston will turn heel with him, but I would love to see Kingston and Moxley stay together as a heel duo. I love those two together, right? And if Moxley turns heel, turn Kingston heel as well. I do not care. Do it, please. But it does seem very interesting. Uh, what they're doing with Kingston right now. seems almost kind of like this is filler for him. Uh, but that would lead us to the main event, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Eventually, like I said, eventually this is gonna lead to Kingston and Jericho having some type of match. I don't think it's gonna be as good as CM Punk and Kingston was, but so this is clearly the direction of kind of where this is going, right? These two baby faces are gonna go at some point. Maybe they're saving that for Revolution. I don't know, but clearly Jericho and Kingston are gonna have to kind of settle this animosity between themselves at some point. Even though they haven't went to blows yet, it's gonna happen. But then the AEW champion Adam Page came out, right. You guys remember last week he had that epic battle with Bryan Danielson as they concluded their rivalry over the AEW title. And we've been asking the question. I asked the question last week, and they answered who was going to be the next challenger for Hangman Adam Page. And someone told me in our Discord server they thought it was going to be John Moxley, which I wouldn't be, surprised if that was it. But Moxley's not back yet, and we don't know when Moxley's going to come back. Moxley doesn't really do social media or anything like that. I would like to believe he's probably doing better, right? It's been a couple months since we've seen him. But like I said, Moxley will come back when Moxley comes back. And definitely at some point they'll do probably Moxley and Page. Heel Moxley versus Page for the AEW title. But he's not there. So it's, you look at the main event scene, right? MJF and Punk are feuding right now. So, they can't challenge Page. Kenny Omega's not there. You could always maybe do Adam Cole, but that, Cole hasn't really showed interest in the AEW World title as of right now. So it was just make you wonder who's gonna be Page's next challenger. And Heyman didn't say too much. He cut a good promo. And like I said, I said last week on the podcast that I felt like Heyman's his reign was validated just based off these two matches alone. Right? Not everyone's gonna agree with me, of course, and that's fine. But I told you, we know that Page is not losing that title anytime soon, but I did think it was going to be, that was just my opinion. I wanted to see where they were going to go next with Page. So Page said after putting over 90 minutes, Page said after putting over the 90 minutes of action with Bryan Danielson, he revealed that it is now a new year with the win-loss records being reset, and he's looking for a new challenger, right? So then Dan Lambert came out, right? And, I love Dan Lambert. The guy is hilarious on the mic. Lambert came out, and I was like, no, are they going to do Scorpio Sky? I was like, I thought they were having Sky go after the TNT title, right? But I was like, well, let me wait. Let me see how the promo goes because Scorpio Sky didn't come out with Lambert. But Lambert more just, he kind of put Page over, right? He talked about how he actually likes Page and how he liked how when Page won the title, he said that he fucking earned it, and he was different than Cody Rhodes, who was using his backstage politics to get his title shots. So, but Lambert's problem wasn't with Page being AEW champion. His problem was more of Page calling himself a cowboy into some of the other famous cowboys in wrestling, right? But then Page, did a really good job of responding, and I forgot, specifically what he said, but I did like how Page responded to Lambert. But then all of a sudden, Lance Archer came in the ring with a chair, right, making his return, and he teased like he was gonna beat down Lambert, but I knew he wasn't gonna do that, right? He went right on Page. So Archer comes out as a babyface. Within 30 seconds, he goes back to being a heel, and he went after Page. He did a good job. He hit Page with some chair shots, right? And then he delivered the blackout, which Page sold beautifully. So Now, since it's a new year and you have the win-loss record being reset, it's not going to take too much, of course, for Archer to become number one contender, right? If this was last year, that would be different. Uh, but this is clearly a filler for you. It's a filler for you, right? Because, like I said, it's still early in Page's reign. We know that Page is not dropping that title right now. There's bigger matches on the horizon for him. Like I said, like potentially a heel John Moxley match, MJF, CM Punk potentially, right, as the months go by. So clearly, this is a filler feud. Archer's not taking that title off of him. Plus, you got to remember that Archer is he's a different wrestler than Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson is one of the best, ground ground, wrestling, wrestlers on the mat, right? He's one of the best on the mat wrestlers in the world, right? Technique for technique. Uh Archer's more of a heavyweight. So but clearly, they're just gonna build this up as all right. How will Paige be able to persevere dealing with the heavyweight power of Archer? The thing is, Archer has had title shots in the past. I think John Moxley, and Cody Rhodes. I believe I could be wrong on that, but he's had multiple title shots in the past. So I don't want to call him a loser, but it's kind of obvious that he's not going to be Page. And then if Archer loses to Page again, and he loses another championship opportunity, it's going to be like the guy's a loser. Like why does this guy keep getting title opportunities when he's just really there to put his opponent over? Like I said, we'll see. Like I said, this is a filler feud. It's a filler feud. So maybe I'm just nitpicking a little bit too much. But this is a filler feud. It's obvious that Page is gonna retain the title. There's no chance that Archer takes that title off of him. It's more just gonna be, see, this is gonna add another element to Page's reign, right? Now dealing with a super heavyweight, contender. We know that Page can go at it with the best wrestlers, technicians, because he beat Bryan Danielson. Now it's like, all right, how you gonna do against a challenger like a super heavyweight like Lance Archer, right? And then when John Moxley comes back, you're dealing with a brawler like him who can wrestle and can bring the pain. So uh good segment, did its job by revealing who Page's next challenge is gonna be, and then we'll see how that is build up over the next couple weeks. I did see some people on social media talking about how they want to see Paige in the ring a little bit more, right? Because at least when Kenny Omega was champion, you would see Omega wrestle every 2-3 weeks. You don't really see that a lot with Paige. He's only wrestled Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson. Sorry, he's only wrestled him. He hasn't had any other matches. So, you know, maybe next week we'll get Paige in action. I do think we should see him in action a little bit more, like because all the other champions do compete on a normal basis, and we really haven't seen too much of Page since he's won the title outside of Bryan Danielson. But we'll see. We'll see. But should be a good way to put some more validation on Page's reign, and that should be that. So good segment, and we'll see where they go from here with Page and Lance Archer. Next up, we had a quick promo from Jade Cargill. Now she's calling the TBS Championship that bitch show, that bitch's show, right? So that's why I guess TBS stands for her. I do want more of a clear indication on if the TBS Championship is the mid card title. I know that we look at it as the mid card title, but when you do, right, when you have basically everybody in the women's division going after that title in the TBS title tournament, right, I think you need to make more of a clear indication that Britt Baker's title is the main title and the TBS title is the mid card title. I think they need to do a better job with that, but we'll see. We'll see. I look at it as the mid card title, but I think you just need to make that a little bit more clear on AEW TV, right? But yeah, Jade Cargill cut a quick promo, and that was that. We'll probably see her back in action next week. It will be interesting to see who they build up, uh, as her first challenger. And I said this last week. whoever, I think one of the WWE alums, right? One of the released WWE girls, no matter if it's Ember Moon, Tegan Knox, or Shotzi, or not Shotzi, Tegan Knox, Ember Moon, Tony Storm. I feel like once those names start arriving to AEW, I think one of those names will be the one to build up to take that title from uh Jade. Because look at it, you have two heels running the women's division, right? Britt Baker's a heel and Jade's a heel. So clearly, your top babyface, of course, are Thunder Rosa and Ruby Soho, but I do think you need to have a couple more really top tier baby faces, top tier baby faces in that women's division. Because eventually Britt Baker's gonna have to drop that title, right? It's not you don't end her reign now. Of course, I'm not saying that. But eventually you're gonna have to start building somebody up to take that title from Britt, and you need challengers for Jade, right? So once Ember Moon, Tegan Knox, and Tony Storm come to AEW, because I expect them to be in AEW in the coming months. That's when uh that's when I would start building up those ladies to potentially be the ones to take the title off Jade and maybe even take the title off of Britt Baker. So we then had Serena Deeb versus Sheeta. This was kind of quick. We know that they've had a long running rivalry. This has been going for months now, right? And this was pretty quick. They didn't the bell. You know, I did the bell ring. Yeah, they did ring the bell. My bad. But this was quick. Sheeta really didn't get any offense in here. Deb attacked her from behind, right, and went after her hard. And they are building up Deeb, but the thing about it is, like I said, there's no babyface champions right now. If there was, I would make an argument that maybe used to build up Deeb for like the TBS championship, or maybe even the AEW Women's title. But there are no babyface champions right now, so that's out of the equation as of now, right? Because Deeb has been very, very impressive. But Deeb, went after Sheeta, went after her left knee, right? And she just went after that the whole time. She pulled the tape and the knee brace off her knee, and she went for a submission. And instead of Sheeta tapping out, the referee called for the bell, and that was that. You know, Sheeta was angry with the ref for ringing the bell. Of course, that's typical babyface. No surprise there. But after the match, Deeba went after Sheeta with a kendo stick, and she did get some shots off. But then referees came out and trainers, and then they chased her off, and that was that. So this rivalry's not over yet. And Deeb did make it clear weeks ago that she was going to go after Sheeta over and over and over again until she was done. So, these two have been going at it. They're gonna keep going. I don't know when this ends. But this was a simple attack, and it made Deeb look good. Sheeta will get her payback. Of course, this is not over yet between these two, and we'll just see what's next here. But I did like how Deeb looked here. She's really really been good as a heel. And yeah, but yeah, at some point these two will finish it. And yeah, this has been a very, very entertaining rivalry with these two. Next up, we had Penta. Sorry, we had Penta Miedo versus Matt Hardy, right? And I think we're all just waiting for Jeff Hardy to get there eventually. I know Jeff's doing his own stuff, but every week I keep hearing people, will this be the week that Jeff joins AEW? Like I said, I expect Jeff to be there at some point, but it's just not right now, right? But you never know. At some point, I do think Jeff will end up in AEW. But but Matt cut a quick promo. Nothing too major here. Nothing too special. And then they had the match. The match was okay. Nothing too crazy. Uh but Penta won with the Fear Factor and got the victory. right? After the match, Penta was on the mic and he wanted to send a message to Malachi Black, right? And he said that he was gonna force Malachi to show him some respect. Then the arena went dark. Malachi Black was in the middle of the ring, and Black went after Penta, but then the Varsity Blondes hit the ring. Of course, getting revenge. Black's been destroying them now, for weeks on AEW television, so this was not a surprise. And then Julia Hart came in, and then she implored her team to stop, which was like dumb. I saw this, I was like, what are you doing? You know, Malachi Black has been destroying y'all for weeks, and now all of a sudden you want, the stop when you have the perfect opportunity to get payback on him, right? The guy, blindsided you. You can't see in one eye because of him, per storyline. But then, Julia was like, telling her team to stop him, this like dumb babyface stuff. Then the arena went dark again, and then Brody King made his AEW debut. I'm not, I'm not the, I'm not the most knowledgeable guy when it comes to Brody King. Yeah, but I'm not the most knowledgeable. I know he has history in Ring of Honor and New Japan and all that. And then of course he looked good there. He dominated the baby faces and stood tall with Black. So clearly these two are gonna be aligned with one another. Be interesting to see if they're gonna be just a tag team or if he's more just gonna be the side to Malachi Black. They're just gonna be more maybe like a small faction. We'll see. We'll see. But I love Malachi Black. I love the way he's been used. I want him to be built up for championships, right? I at some point I think Malachi should be in the AEW World Championship scene. You could put him in the TNT title scene, but I think Malachi is too good to be put in the mid card division. But I want to see Malachi Black eventually in that AEW World title picture, right? Of course, there's so many names in that division right now, but I would love to see Malachi there. And him having Brody King, that's what's gonna make them and make him and those two in general, they're gonna become one of the most dangerous duos in all of AEW. In a company where factions and duos is kind of the key to being successful, right? AEW just had another, they just added another dominant duo to the table with Black and Brody King. So these two are going to be a force to be reckoned with in singles and tag team action in the weeks going forward. So this was, like I said, this was really, this was a simple segment, right? A lot of people were going crazy in Discord over this, and should be exciting to see what these two do going forward. I know that Matt Hardy was kind of relegated to the background here, especially this was his hometown, North Carolina. But like I said, if Jeff Hardy ends up in AEW like he should, Matt Hardy will be fine. Private Party and the Hardy Boys, especially the Hardy Boys making one last run in AEW, right? Especially potentially going after the AEW tag titles. It's going to be super exciting if that's the case. So I wouldn't really worry about Matt Hardy too much here. Plus, uh, after the match, Andrade confronted Matt Hardy backstage, and basically Andrade wanted to talk some business with Matt Hardy. We didn't really get any specifics, but we haven't seen Andrade in a couple weeks, so uh, pretty much since he finished up his feud with Pac, and we did see Andrade kind of in a little feud with Cody Rhodes there, but it will be interesting to see what happens between those two, right? So Andrade and Matt Hardy, they went into this private meeting, right? No pun intended. The private party, wasn't allowed in the ring, in the meeting, and we'll probably have to find out, what's the big deal with those two in the weeks to come. We also got a video package from Pac, right? The bastard Pac, the bastard Pac. He talked about being blinded, but how being blinded made was actually able to make him see again, and we'll have to wait and see what's next for Pac. The guy's always doing these cryptic videos, so Pac should be back on AEW TV soon and we'll see what's next for him. It's just crazy. It's crazy how massive AEW's roster is. It really is because they do all these matches, all these big segments, and then they also have like, 5, 6, 7 backstage interviews and promo that they do behind the scenes and video packs and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy how they get this amount of people on the show in a 2 hour period. It's kind of impressive. It's kind of impressive. I know they don't want to go the 3 hour route, but it's impressive to me how they're able to do all of this in 2 hours. But we had the next up we had the Acclaim versus Bear County. Right, this was a very quick match. It wasn't a bad match either. I was more looking at the clock here, and I was like, we have a main event TNT title match. I was like, why are they cutting it short? It seemed like that match was going to get cut short. This match went, a little less than 10 minutes. It wasn't too long. The Acclaim cut a promo, of course, on Sting and Darby Allin. They've been feuding with them now for a couple of weeks. And then they went up against Bear County. So the match was a competitive match. Wasn't anything too crazy. Fast paced action. Uh, they went for the Bear, right? Bear County went for what I think their finish is called the Bear, but the Acclaim were able to work together to overcome the baby faces. I think I forget the I think Anthony Bowens. Yeah, I got the name wrong. And I was thinking of the name. Anthony Bowens hit the mic drop, which is just the elbow drop from the top rope. And got the win, and that was that. Afterwards, I was looking at the clock. All right, okay, they're gonna speed this up towards the TNT title match, and then all of a sudden, Sting comes out, and I was like, okay, I'm not against him. I'm just like, they're not gonna have a lot of time for the main event. So Sting comes out with a baseball bat, and they got into the Acclaim gets into a brawl with Darby Allin and Sting. Darby Allin came from the other side of the arena to attack them, and they stood tall, right? It almost this feels true. My friend said this in our Discord server. It almost feels like Allin and Sting have feuded with everybody, even though of course that's not the case. It only feels like that because Darby Allin has so many matches because he loves wrestling. He's like one of the hearts and souls of AEW. It feels like they've went up against everybody, but they really haven't. That's not the case. That's not the case. But it does feel like they've feuded with so many teams. It's just that Darby Allin faces everybody. Sting, Sting's undefeated. And Sting's usually by Darby Allin's side, but Sting doesn't wrestle, all the time. It's just that he's always by Darby Allin's side. That's what it feels like. Sting and Darby Allin have faced everybody. But clearly, I don't think they announced a match between these two on Rampage. I think that's here for next week. I may be wrong, but I think next week they announced Allin and Sting versus the Acclaim. I could be wrong, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens next week if that is the case. But you know, simple segment, nothing bad here. And then finally, we get into our main event: Daniel Garcia versus Sammy Guerrero for the TNT Championship. It was announced. It was announced that next week Cody Rhodes will be back in action. I believe he had COVID, if I'm correct. I don't know the specifics, but I believe that's why he was gone. But this was our main event. It felt a little bit weird because, like I said, I thought Punk and Wardlow were going to get the main event spot, but they gave it to this, which it was whatever. This was a solid match, but Garcia, he still was a little bit green in the ring. He was great in this match, but the thing about it is, I just didn't think Garcia had done enough yet to deserve a big main event spot like this. He delivered, right? He delivered, but that was just really my initial thoughts going into the match. But this was a great main event to close the show, and really, it only went like what I think like 12 minutes, if I'm right. It only went about 12 minutes. It wasn't a long main event. Uh, But these two killed it, and like I said, these two are young stars that are gonna be in AEW for a very long time. So the fact that they were actually able to have a solid match like this in the main event spot, where people like me were kind of questioning it being given the main event spot, and them actually making me shut up. That was fantastic. I'm not always right, and I'm one of the first to admit that I am not the god of wrestling or anything like that. I didn't think Garcia did belong to that main event spot, but he proved me wrong. This was a really, really well done main event to close out the show. Very high intensely. Uh, you know, but yeah, Daniel Garcia, man, he has very, 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 very good technician skills. The way he was able to stretch and punish Guerrero here, man, very was solid, solid. I was like, wow. I was like, damn, like this guy has some major skills. Remind me a little bit of Daniel Bryan, really did, or Brian Danielson, since we're talking AEW. But you guys get the point. There was lots of different spots here, where I thought that Garcia actually would win the match because I was looking at the clock. I was like, we only have a couple minutes left in the show. I was like, and the way that Garcia was pulling out, he did like a pile driver. I was like, oh my gosh, that could be the end. But then I had to remind myself, this is AEW. AEW does big spots like this all the time. It has people kick out. In WWE, that's probably a finisher right there. But in AEW, we know AEW loves doing their big spots. But you had 2.0 came out of ringside. They attacked Eddie Kingston and Jericho, right? Uh, but Guerrero was still able to uh, keep his eyes on Garcia, and Garcia went for the or not Garcia. Sammy went for the go to hell, the GT8, uh, and then T 2.0 got him on the apron. But Sammy was able to fight the heels off, and then he was able to land a beautiful go to hell for the successful title defense, and that was that. After the show, right, Jericho grabbed the bat and was able to run the heels off, and then Jericho and Kingston had another tense showdown to close the show. So, like I said, they are teasing Jericho and Kingston. They have not been able to get along to this point, so it will be interesting to see how they continue to build this feud going into the coming weeks. Clearly they need to do a better job of making us believe that 2.0 has a chance because right now they don't really look that believable to beat Kingston and Jericho. But I guess that's part of the story, right? Jericho and Kingston not able to get along even as baby faces, and then you also have that other element of where does the rest of the inner circle because they're friends with Kingston, and then Jericho's like their brother. So where does Kingston, uh, or where does the rest of the inner circle, land when it comes to Kingston and Jericho? But we'll see. But excuse me, we'll see. But this was a solid main event. Guerrero and Garcia, killed it, and next week, of course, with Cody Rhodes coming back, that's going to be interesting. I think they're going to quickly do another TNT title match, and we'll see if if Cody's going to win that or if Sammy wins that. You can go either way. Of course, it depends on if Cody's finally ready to turn heel or not. But like we'll see what happens. I think next week, and either on Rampage or maybe 2 weeks from now, I think we'll have another TNT title match between Garvera and Cody Rhodes. 'Cause I don't think with Cody coming back next week, they're just gonna have uh with Garvera or with Cody coming back next week. I don't think they just automatically strip Sammy of the championship. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know how TNT does or how AEW does things. But clearly, I think since Sammy was the interim champion, even if it was for a week and a half while Cody was gone, they're gonna do another match between those two, just to uh, end it and see, who's the clear TNT champion, right? So we'll see what happens next week with Cody being back. That should be interesting. But all in all, decent AEW show. Decent AEW show. The big things, of course, is the continuation of the CM Punk and MGF story with CM Punk and Sean Spears next week. And Hangman Page now finding his next challenger for the world title, with that being Lance Archer, right? And of course, you have some other things with Brody King making his debut alongside Malachi Black. And, all in all, decent show, a decent show. And so next week we got the two big things. I think Punk and Sean Spears, and we also have Cole and Britt Baker teaming up to go up against Stan Lander and Orange Cassidy, which should be fun as hell. So we'll see what happens next week. Other than that, guys, thank you guys for joining me here on the Legit Shoot podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you guys did, leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel by hitting the bell next to my name, Fitzmonk TV, so you guys are notified every time I post a new video. Check out all the other content I have on the channel, the Monday Night Raw reviews and everything like that. You guys can go find those in the Legit Shoot podcast playlist. Thank you guys. Follow me down on social media. The links are in the description down below. Until next time, next podcast will probably be this weekend. Probably this weekend will be our next podcast. With SmackDown as we continue the build towards the Royal Rumble, which is about 2.5 weeks away. Royal Rumble will be here before we know it. And yeah, but outside of that, that's about it. I'll see you guys later, man. Stay safe and healthy, y'all. Peace.